Good morning from the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles. I'm meteorologist Donald Jones. I know I said that we weren't going to do another briefing until this evening, but I put together a whole briefing package this morning for another group. So I was like, yeah, we might as well do a briefing on the latest on Tropical Storm Beryl here this morning. If you hear some noise in the background, that is a little space heater that I have in this room because it's absolutely freezing in here. You would think being the early part of July with high temperatures in the 90s, it wouldn't be cold in our office, but I think there's something wrong with it. So hopefully that's not too distracting. But we are going to talk a little bit here about Tropical Storm Beryl, which is still kind of a mess here this morning, to be completely honest. Maximum sustained winds with it are around 60 miles per hour. And we'll take a look at it here on the satellite in just a minute, but it really is just a shadow of its former self at the moment. But it is expected to re-intensify and actually become a Category 1 hurricane once again before making landfall. Sometime it looks like on Monday across the central Texas coastline. As always, this is a live interactive briefing, so if you have any questions as we go through our briefing, feel free to post them in our comment section, and we'll answer them just as soon as we wrap up our actual briefing portion here. Which shouldn't take too long, maybe just about 10-ish minutes or thereabout. Let me go ahead and make sure that everybody can hear me. Just want to make sure the audio is working. Looks like it is. Let's go ahead and maybe, if my clicker will work, maybe it'd help if I turned it on, jump into our briefing, and we'll start with a blank screen because I didn't have the actual satellite up there. But here it is. This is actually just the sun is just now coming up here on Beryl this morning. You can see the center of circulation is right in this area here. So all of the shower and thunderstorm activity is actually displaced off to the north and a little bit to the northeast there. And there's virtually nothing kind of on the western, southern, or even southeastern side of this storm here this morning. That's just another indication of the fact that it's a very weak system right now. Even with 60-mile-an-hour winds, it kind of got torn apart really good by the Yucatan Peninsula, which is certainly good news for us. But this storm is it's gonna take some time to kind of get its act back together. What happened is the low-level circulation and the mid-level circulation got displaced. So it's kind of tilted at this point. The low-level circulation is not in the same location as the mid-level circulation. And what that does is it makes it very, very difficult for the storm to intensify. So until they kind of come back together and get kind of situated on top of each other, we're not going to see much in the way of intensification. So I don't expect the storm to really get much stronger throughout the day today. And in fact, you may not see it any stronger than it is right now by this time this evening. We're looking at maximum sustained winds right now of 60 miles per hour. And again, we don't expect that to change a whole lot here as we go through the day today. But we are going to be looking at intensification kind of getting reestablished either tonight or tomorrow morning. And we'll be looking at a Category 1 hurricane, again, expected at landfall, which looks like right now it's going to be right around the noontime hour or thereabouts on Monday afternoon. We're still looking at landfall across central Texas. This is going to be just north of the Corpus Christi area. It's actually going to be near Port Lavaca at this point. Now, that hasn't changed a whole lot from last night. If you joined us for our briefing last night, this forecast track is basically right on top of the previous one, so it hasn't moved either north or south. So we're still looking at a central Texas landfall Monday afternoon. Go. I'm getting all kinds of trouble with this thing this morning. It's okay. We're going to get it together. Sea surface temperatures, of course, are still very, very warm and favorable for development, and that's part of why we're expecting that re-intensification. Once that storm, again, gets kind of stacked back on top of itself, we've got favorable conditions developing. It's going to be moving into some very warm waters in the upper 80s across the northwestern Gulf of Mexico. So conditions will be favorable there. Right now, we are also looking at some wind shear within the storm. Let me see if I can make this full screen. This is a kind of a difficult graphic to actually see here, but you can see the Gulf of Mexico there with Beryl, with the little tropical storm icon, and just to the left of the little tropical storm icon, you see those yellows and greens. That's an indication of increased wind shear. We're looking at about 20 or 30 knots of wind shear on the west side of that storm. That's also kind of keeping it from really getting its act together here this morning. And that's going to continue through the day. But the wind shear is eventually going to dissipate. So we are expecting that to become more favorable for development as we go into tonight and tomorrow as well. So conditions are gradually going to become more favorable at the same time that the storm is getting itself kind of reoriented. And that's why we're expecting that intensification to kind of get underway starting either late tonight or tomorrow and continuing probably right up until landfall middle of the day on Monday. Now let's talk about what we're going to expect across our area. We're still not looking at any kind of real significant impacts from a wind perspective. This is a look at the tropical storm force wind speed probabilities. So this is the likelihood of seeing tropical storm force winds in any area. And for Southeast Texas, we're generally looking at a 10 to 30% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. For Southwest Louisiana, it's actually even lower, a 5 to 20% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds out of Beryl. This is whether it remains a tropical storm or becomes a hurricane. We're still looking at very low overall probabilities of seeing those in our area. So we're not looking at this to be any kind of a significant effect from a wind perspective. Now, and taking a look at the hurricane force winds, we're actually looking at an even lower probability. So we're looking at generally less than a 5% chance. Those hurricane force winds, again, we're still talking about probably a Category 1 hurricane at best at landfall, are going to be confined to the area immediately around landfall. So we're looking at the Corpus Christi area and maybe just a little bit further north of that. As far as the time of arrival, again, we're not expecting tropical storm force winds, but if we do see them, it's going to be probably Monday morning is going to be the time frame we're looking at for the arrival of those tropical storm force winds. And then if we do happen to see tropical storm force winds, the earliest that we can expect them will actually be Sunday evening. So Sunday evening will be the earliest. Monday morning will be the most likely, but we're actually not expecting tropical storm force winds at all. So there's really not a need to pay too close attention to those times at this point. What we are looking at more of, though, is going to be rainfall. We're looking at quite a bit of rainfall developing, not just today. Well, we are expecting it today, but as we head into Monday, Tuesday, possibly even into Wednesday, we could be looking at a multi-day rainfall event. That's going to be our biggest overall impact from this storm, because as we saw earlier with let me see if I can go back to the actual graphic here. With the forecast track, once this storm kind of makes landfall, it's going to take a northward turn and then kind of move off to the northeast. So the remnants of the storm are going to move across East Texas and potentially northwest Louisiana. So we're going to get a lot of rain left over from that out of this. So the rainmaker aspect of it is going to be by far the biggest issue. Now, we are going to be looking at rain today. In fact, this is the excessive rainfall outlook for today. We've got pretty high chances of showers and thunderstorms across the region today. This is actually associated with a weak, quote unquote, cold front that we're going to be seeing kind of draped across the area today. But this is not directly associated with Beryl, but we're still going to be looking at a fairly significant rainfall possible today, a couple of inches, not out of the realm of possibility. As we head into Sunday, we're going to be looking at scattered afternoon thunderstorms once again, but the real rain with Beryl is going to come starting Monday. That's when the higher overall risk is going to be. You can see the slight risk of excessive rainfall there. There is going to be a risk of flash flooding across parts of southeast Texas and western Louisiana. The area is highlighted in yellow there. That is a 15% chance or greater, if I can get myself out of the way there, of seeing flash flooding on Monday. As we head into Tuesday, the probabilities kind of continue. We're still looking at a risk that 15% probability, that slight risk actually extends a little bit further to the east. So we're still looking at a rainfall threat. And then even going into Wednesday, we're still looking at a lower but still risk for flash flooding with this system. Overall, we're generally expecting between, you can see them again, let me get myself out of the way here, looking at between about 2 and up to 6 inches of rainfall across southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. Obviously, higher rainfall totals are going to be further down to the west between Houston and over towards the Corpus Christi area and just essentially east of Corpus Christi, where you're looking at anywhere between about 8 to upwards of 12 inches of rain down that way. But still, with the remnants of that system, we are going to be looking at the potential for 2 to 6 inches of rainfall across our region, and that could lead to some flash flooding. The other thing we're going to have to kind of keep an eye out for is the potential for any of those lingering rain bands. A lot of times what will happen is as a storm departs and kind of lifts off to the northeast, we'll get a feeder band almost that'll set up across an area, and it'll just train over the same area, just dumping inches and inches and inches of rainfall across the same area. Unfortunately, it's impossible to predict exactly where that's going to be in advance, but that will have the threat of having even higher rainfall than the 2 to 6 inches that we're indicating here. Storm surge not expected to be a huge threat across our area. You can see the highest storm surge, again, are going to be kind of from Corpus Christi up towards Matagorda Bay. Between Matagorda and Galveston Bay, you're looking at between about 2 to 4 feet of surge, 3 to 5 feet from Corpus Christi to Matagorda Bay. And then from our area, High Island, Texas, east into southwest Louisiana, we're going to be looking at generally between 1 to 2 feet of storm surge. So some minor coastal flooding is not going to be out of the realm of possibility. In fact, it's officially forecasted that we are going to see some minor coastal flooding. This is going to be somewhat similar to what we saw with Alberto just a couple of weeks ago. We do have storm surge watches in effect for a large part of the Texas Gulf Coast, but again, this does not include anywhere in our area, so it does not include Jefferson County or anywhere in southwest Louisiana. This does cover essentially from Galveston Bay all the way down to Brownsville, Texas, but it does not include any of the areas that we cover. We are still going to be looking at, like I said, the potential for some coastal flooding. This is the tide forecast for Calcasieu Pass. Again, I'm going to get out the way here so you can take a look at that. Starting today, you can see the line in blue there is the normal tides. The black line is the predicted tide. So you can see as we go forward into Monday and Tuesday of next week, we're looking at much higher than normal tides. We're looking at tides running roughly about a foot to possibly a foot and a half above normal both Monday and Tuesday. And chances are they're probably still going to be a little bit elevated as we head into Wednesday as well. Same thing for Southeast Texas, using Texas Point as a kind of a proxy for Southeast Texas. Again, the blue line is where the normal tides would be, and the black line is what is actually being forecast. So we're looking at anywhere between about a foot to a foot and a half above normal during high tide periods, both Monday, Tuesday, and that'll probably include Wednesday as well. For Alamo, which is kind of the proxy for South Central Louisiana and the Vermilion Bay area, we're looking at very much the same thing, anywhere between about a foot to maybe a foot and a half above normal Monday and Tuesday. And again, that should probably linger into Wednesday as well. Maybe not quite as high on Wednesday, but we're still probably going to be looking at tides running about a foot or thereabout above normal. Taking a quick look at the 4-day outlook here, we are going to be looking at some pretty wet weather here for the next, say, 4 or 5 days or so. We're looking at pretty good rain chances today. The driest day, I think, if we're going to see a dry day, it's going to be Sunday. We have less overall rain probabilities on Sunday, but still looking at a 50 to 60% chance. But at least as we go through the first half of next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're looking at pretty wet conditions with the remnants of Beryl. We should have some drier conditions moving in maybe by the end of the week. The silver lining of that is, we're going to be looking at a lot of rain around. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of clouds around, so it's not going to be quite as hot. So there's that. But generally speaking, it is going to be a pretty wet and stormy start to the week here, going all the way through next Wednesday. So that's what we have here from the National Weather Service this morning. If you do have any questions, feel free to post them in our comment section. Before you head out, if you don't have any questions, we are going to be doing another one of these briefings this evening. I don't have an exact time. I think we're probably going to shoot for maybe around 7:30, but I will post that on our social media pages once we have that exact time. I've been working all night tonight, so I got to go home and get some sleep, and then I'll come back and give you an update later on this evening with regards to the latest on Beryl. So if you do have any questions, feel free to post them in our comments. If not, you are free to head out, and we will talk to you again, hopefully this evening. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and throw that back up, and I'll jump back and see if we do have any questions here. Bear with me just a moment while I read through the comments. And questions. Nicole says, where do you think landfall will be? Landfall is going to be, right now, based on the current forecast track, just to the north of Corpus Christi in Port Lavaca, Texas. Now, this is subject to change. We could be looking at, a little bit further north or south of there, but we've been fairly consistent since yesterday evening. We had a pretty good shift in the forecast track yesterday, but from yesterday evening to this morning, the models have been pretty consistent, and the Hurricane Center's forecast track really hasn't changed. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the landfall to be Monday. Right, it's going to be middle of the day Monday, but just north of Corpus Christi. Deanna asks, what are your thoughts on this storm re-strengthening? It is expected to re-strengthen. We're going to be looking at it becoming, or forecasted to become, at least a Category 1 hurricane, and the official forecast actually brings it to a strong Category 1 hurricane with maximum winds around 90 miles an hour at landfall. Now, could it reach low-end Category 2? Yeah, that's certainly not out of the realm of possibility, but it is forecast to re-strengthen. Probably not today, like we were talking about earlier. It's going to take a little time for it to kind of get reoriented and get stacked back on top of itself, because it's kind of separated right now. The low level circulation and the mid level circulation are in two different places at the moment. So it's what we call tilted. So as you go up through the atmosphere, the circulation is actually in a different location geographically than it is down towards the ground. So it's kind of got to get stacked back on top of itself before it can get begin to re-intensify. But we do expect that to happen either late tonight or tomorrow, and that's when we'll start seeing that intensification. But it wouldn't surprise me if we didn't see any intensification today. It won't occur until probably tonight or as we head into tomorrow. Kathy says, how is this going to affect the dams? Is the rain going to cause them to open the gates and cause more flooding issues? That all depends on exactly how much rain we get and exactly where it occurs. Yeah, it's certainly going to be a possibility. You know, if we see 5 or 6 inches up around the Toledo Bend Dam area or north of there and falls into the reservoir, yeah, there's certainly a possibility that the gates could be opened again. June asked, do you think I guess you mean the projected path could change and come to Louisiana? Right now, that's pretty unlikely. We are right on let me go and make this full screen again. We are right on the easternmost edge of the cone of uncertainty, is kind of basically right along the Sabine River. So we're not completely out of the realm of possibility, but again, this is just for the center of circulation. So we are going to see some impacts, mainly in the form of rain, but I don't want you to focus so much on the exact location of the landfall. We want you to focus on the actual impacts, the rain, the coastal flooding, because that's what we're more likely to see with this system. Susie asks, is Beryl faster moving than Harvey? I don't want flooding. I'm watching from Viter. We're not expecting Beryl to stall the way that Harvey did. It is, kind of like you see the forecast track here, it is expected to keep moving. Now, it is going to slow down a little bit from where it's been moving. It's been moving at about 14, 15 miles an hour. You can see it's down to 12 miles per hour here this morning, and it is going to slow down a little bit more, but we don't expect it to stall completely the way Harvey did and just dump on an area for days and days and days. That said, there is still a risk of flash flooding. Even without it stalling, we still could be looking at, again, 2 to 6 inches of rainfall across parts of the area. So that could lead to some localized flash flooding. That is our forecast rainfall totals across the region. You can see the areas we're kind of highlighted in that dark green and into the yellow. That's anywhere between 2 to 6 inches of rainfall across our area. Press says, thanks from the Iberia Parish OSEP. We appreciate you. Well, thank you, Press. We certainly appreciate you. Cassandra asks, is Jasper, Texas going to get the tropical depression part of the storm? By the time it gets up that way, yeah, that's the equivalent of about what you're going to be looking at. Either that or just flat out just the remnants. You can see by Tuesday morning, it's maybe a minimal tropical storm. Sometime during the day, it's going to degrade into a depression or perhaps a remnant as it moves across East Texas into parts of northwestern Louisiana. So yeah, that's about what you're going to see, if that, in the Jasper, Texas area. Big Johnson, 1978 says, are the latest trends more favorable for Southwest Louisiana today than they were yesterday? it depends what you consider more favorable. There really hasn't been any change in the forecast track, and because of that, there really hasn't been any change in the expected impacts across our area since yesterday. So it's roughly about the same. Again, rain and the coastal flooding are going to be the biggest impacts. Brandon asks, is it going to Houston, Texas, and how long will it last? Houston is going to see some impacts again. I think the biggest threat for Houston is going to be more rain-related than wind-related. So you're looking at higher rainfall rates actually for the Houston area. We don't explicitly cover that area, but we can take a look at the large regional graphic here. The Houston area is in that orange there, indicating 6 to 8 inches of rain possible. So yeah, the overall rain threat for Houston is going to be higher than it is further across southeast Texas or southwest Louisiana. And it'll probably be a little bit breezier. You may see some gusts to tropical storm force, 30, 40 miles an hour. I don't think you're going to be looking at hurricane force winds in the Houston area. No, not based on the current forecast track. Dulcin asks, is it possible that Beryl can ride the coast? I think you mean coast, but it's going to turn eventually north and then northeast, but it's going to be a little bit further inland when it does so. You can see the forecast track there, making landfall, again, just north of the Corpus Christi area, and then it is going to work inland and eventually off to the northeast. So I don't think it's going to be right along the coast. It's going to do this kind of curve up across East Texas and then into Northwest Louisiana, then up into Arkansas, Tennessee, etc. So it's not going to stay along the coast for too long. Kimberly asks, how much flooding do you think for the Port Arthur area? I can't tell you exactly how much rain we're going to see in the Port Arthur area or exactly when and where it's going to flood specifically. The best I can do is offer you the risk assessment. We've got about a 15% chance of seeing flooding in the Port Arthur area. And our rainfall totals in the Port Arthur area generally going to be in the 4 to 6 inch range. That's what we're officially forecasting at this point. Chad asks, are we expecting anything life-threatening in Houma, Louisiana? No, not really. What you're going to see is just kind of what we're seeing in southwest Louisiana. You may see some minor coastal flooding, 1 to 2 feet above normal tides. That's going to be about it. You probably won't even see much in the way of rainfall over that way, maybe an inch or two at most, and that's probably generous. We're not expecting any significant impacts for southeast Louisiana. DS, are we in the clear for now for Lake Charles? I wouldn't say you're in the clear per se. Again, we are going to be looking at some rainfall, potentially 2 to 6 inches of rain, like you see on the graph here. From a wind perspective, yeah, you're probably for the most part in the clear. We're not expecting hurricane force winds. We're not really even expecting tropical storm force winds. We are going to be looking at rain, and we're going to be looking at some coastal flooding along the immediate coastline. Carolyn says, SPC mentioned some tornadoes possible, especially southeast Texas near the Sabine River. What are my thoughts? Anytime we have a landfalling tropical system, we do have a risk of tornadoes. Now, exactly how high that risk is going to be kind of remains to be seen. But even in the outer rain bands of hurricanes and tropical systems, we can have tornadoes develop. So yes, I think there is going to be a risk of tornadoes. It's going to be a low risk. But yeah, for southeast Texas, even western Louisiana, there will be a low risk of tornadoes probably Monday afternoon into Tuesday. That's kind of what we're looking at for that. Corey asked, do you expect flooding in Houston? Like we just talked about with the rainfall totals, we're expecting higher rainfall totals in the Houston area. This is just not showing up well on the screen behind me, so I'm going to make it full screen again. Generally looking at anywhere between 6 to 8 inches of rain. That's certainly enough to cause some flooding in the Houston area. Will it happen? I can't say with 100% certainty, but the probabilities of flooding in Houston is certainly higher than it's going to be across, say, western Louisiana. So yeah, there is going to be a flood risk in the Houston area. Deidre asks, how much rain in Orange, Texas? We're going to be looking at anywhere between 2 to possibly up to 6 inches of rain is what we're looking at for the Orange area. Dana says, thanks from Senla. Storm anxiety can be crippling. I certainly understand. I can relate. We've all been through these kind of storms before. Karina asks, how long will this weather last? Did you say Wednesday? Yes, we're probably still going to be looking at some remnant activity moving in through the area as late as Wednesday, possibly even Wednesday evening. So yeah, the remnants, that the rain will become less widespread as we get into Wednesday. But yeah, we'll still be looking at rain around on Wednesday. Candy asks, do you expect watches to go out for Southeast Texas today? I'm going to say no, not based on the current forecast track. Now, if the track shifts further to the north, then we may see some watches go up. I do expect that there'll be either hurricane watches or tropical storm watches going up for parts of central Texas. I don't think they're going to get as far. I don't think they're going to get east of High Island, at least not right now. That's my thinking anyway. It's possible I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I'm thinking after kind of listening to what the Hurricane Center was thinking this morning. Christy says, I just woke up. Did it change again, y'all? No, it hasn't changed from last night. That's kind of what we're talking about. We really haven't seen any change in the forecast track, nor the expected impacts across our area. It's been pretty much the exact same. If you watched our briefing last night, or if you saw the forecast track yesterday evening before going to bed, nothing's really changed. Teacher asked, do we need to leave from Orange, Texas? No, there's no need to evacuate anywhere across Southeast Texas or Southwest Louisiana at this time. Don asks, have you heard of any mandatory evacuations? No, again, not in Southeast Texas or Southwest Louisiana. I can't speak for further south along the Texas Gulf Coast down towards Corpus. There is a Weather Service office in Corpus Christi. They cover that area. There's also a Weather Service office in Houston that covers Houston, Galveston area. So they'll have more information about that, but I am not aware of any evacuations, nor should there be any evacuations for anywhere in Southeast Texas or Southwest Louisiana. Kathy asks, what is the temperature of the Gulf of Mexico? Right now, we're looking at mid to upper 80s. That is what you see on the graphic there. That is the current sea surface temperatures. Where the storm is at the moment, we're looking at about 85 degrees. The waters that's going to be traveling through as it goes through the northwestern Gulf are about 87 degrees. So they're quite warm. Derek says, is there a model showing rapid intensification like Beryl did earlier with it getting pulled more northerly? What's the results and anticipated rain then? No, we are not. We don't have any models that are showing a rapid intensification. We are showing a gradual intensification, but not a rapid intensification. So there's, I mean, I really don't want to speculate about what the impacts would look like with that scenario because we're not actually forecasting it. This is a storm, at least now, that is a shadow of its former self. Now, it is going to re-intensify. It is expected to become a Category 1 hurricane again, but this is not going to be the same kind of storm that hit Jamaica and parts of the islands in the Caribbean. This is a much weaker storm at this point. Nicole says that Matagorda did voluntary evacuations, but not mandatory. I can't speak to that. Again, I haven't heard either way, but there's some, that's just a FYI for those who may be watching from those areas. Karen asked about the wind forecast in Bridge City. I live in an RV. We're not expecting any significant winds with this in Bridge City. You know, maybe a breeze of 15 or 20 miles an hour. That should be about it. Belita says, I pray you'll not estimated Beryl because he a fool out there in that hot water. Well, again, we are expecting it to intensify, but we're not expecting it to rapidly intensify. So again, we're looking at a Category 1 hurricane at landfall. At least that's the current forecast. Gladys asks, what's the barometric pressure for the storm now? Let me see if it's on here. I don't think it is. I think the Hurricane Center said it was up to, I want to say somewhere around 996 millibars, if I'm not mistaken. So it's definitely come way up from where it was. It was in the 930s when it was a Category 5 hurricane. So that's an appropriate pressure for a mid-level tropical storm. Jaden asked, do you think it can be a very weak Category 2? Yes, that's not out of the realm of possibility. The official forecast has it as a strong Category 1 at landfall. So yeah, a low-end Category 2, maybe 100-mile-an-hour winds, that's not out of the realm of possibility. So yeah, that could very well happen. Mary asks, will Beaumont have any flooding or wind? No wind to speak of. Again, maybe a little breeze, 15 or 20 miles an hour. As far as flooding, again, we're looking at about 2 to 6 inches of rainfall expected across southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. That's probably going to lead to at least some nuisance flooding in a few locations. Exactly where they're going to be, I can't say for sure, but there is going to be a risk of flooding in the Beaumont area, but not wind. We're not expecting we're not expecting wind to be a concern anywhere in southeast Texas or southwest Louisiana. Diane's asking about travel from Lake Charles to Houston Tuesday. You're going to be traveling through a lot of rain. That's kind of the bottom line. Your biggest concern is going to be the potential for flooding. So check the roadways before you leave. For Louisiana, you can check that LA 511, and then for Texas roads, Texas DOT. Donna asked, why different categories from different weather folks? I'm not sure what different category you're referring to. Right now it's a tropical storm. Eventually it is forecast to be a Category 1 hurricane at landfall. That's the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. So that should be, everybody can have their opinion whether it's higher or lower, but that's the official forecast right now. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the time being here. If you have a question that I missed for some reason, feel free to shoot me a direct message on Facebook. I'll be happy to answer it that way. I'll be here for a few more minutes before heading out. If you have a question that you think of while you're viewing this as a recording, you can also send us a message on Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it now, a tweet or an X, or we're on Twitter/X. So you can send us a message that way. You can email me directly if you'd like at donald.jones@noaa.gov. Email's on your screen there. You can also give our office a call directly if you want to talk to a forecaster in person at area code 337-477-5285. So lots of ways to get in touch with us if you do still have a question. We are going to do another one of these briefings this evening. I'll have the exact time on our social media pages later on today. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll have all the latest and greatest information at that point. Again, I don't expect there to be much change or much intensification of Beryl between now and this evening, because it's going to take a while for it to get itself reorganized now that it's back over open water in the southern Gulf of Mexico. So don't be surprised if we come back this evening and we're still looking at just a mid-level tropical storm. At least that's the hope. Fingers crossed. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again later this evening.